Good morning, everybody. Betting for Breakfast Live, powered by the Sharp app, the #1 sports gambling app. Guys, if you are getting down on these bowl games in college football season, be a part of the team. Join the free Discord. The link is in the description because it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, this is a bowl season like no other. I think, Dave, it's been a season like no other. Lots of movement on the coaching front. We have some great playoff games, some great stories. We're going to get into that a little bit later with Lexi. I'm sure she is on cloud nine with her Michigan Wolverines, the big upset over the Buckeyes, getting into the college football playoffs. So much going on after conference championship weekend. It's like you have to be glued to the news feed every single week, and that's why we are here to deliver you the best information. Dave, conference championships over. I had a pretty good week myself. We ended up 3-2, hit Pitt 1.5 units over Wake Forest. Was a winning weekend. Got Cal in the late night. Hopefully we can deliver another weekend, another week, and then get into bowl season on a high note. How are you feeling after the conference championships have wrapped up?
Good. I mean, surprisingly, I think the dogs barked a little bit. I mean, other than Pitt and some other teams, but when you see Baylor with the upset, Bama with the upset, we were all over Bama. You saw some dogs that, really should almost maybe be a foreshadowing into some bowl games as well. These teams, when they get, kicked down a little bit, we talked about Saban in that role. He's amazing. And that's what you got to look at probably going forward a little bit here too now. But yeah, it was a good conference championship weekend. What I love is, you got some new blood in these playoffs, right? I mean, you can say Michigan, Georgia. I mean, Georgia, I think this is their second time. Could be their third. It's two or three. And Cincinnati, obviously, with Bama being the one that's always there. So it's going to be fun. It's good. College football was crazy this season, like you said, and it's going to lead to a crazy December and January.
Not a bigger underdog story than I think Cincinnati having to play Alabama, who flipped the college football playoff rankings upside down with their dominating performance of the Georgia Bulldogs. That was a game that you were on. You were on Bama. I liked Bama. I wanted the 7. I held out, and
I told you I wasn't scared.
6.5, but you weren't scared. There was great play by you, but I think that's the biggest takeaway of the week. Like when you look at that and just Bama being able to turn it on when they needed to, back against the wall. But my question for you, and this is, we're going to get into the playoffs. We can talk about that a little bit later. But how much of that do you feel was Bama asserting their dominance? And how much of it do you feel like it was Georgia just kind of being Kirby, man, and just not getting it done in a big spot?
Probably more Georgia being Kirby. And I say that because you're rolling at 11-0. You beat everybody. We talked about everybody by 17 points or more. Your only close game was versus Clemson early in the season. And we saw what they turned out to be. But I think they were just coached up like they're the best team ever. I mean, they were talking about this defense as being – and you got to throw this defense out of the picture now of saying they're the best ever, right? They can't be after that.
They got smoked.
And I just think a little bit of the Kirby. I think they just went in a little overconfident. I think they went in, this is the year that we're going to do it to Bama, and they just don't. Now, it's good for them. And I told you, I almost had Bama outright. I was leaning that way. It's good for Georgia. I really believe this is good for Georgia, and we're going to see a rematch. But we got to get there first. But, yeah, I think it was more Kirby. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it was more of like a good wake-up call for Georgia. I think it plays out better for them this way, but I do think that it's Kirby. Like, that is the concern. We're going to talk about the matchups a little bit later, but my biggest concern about Georgia moving forward is, can you trust Kirby in this spot? And that's really the main thing. I knew when that game is, I thought that they were going to attack that Georgia defense through the air because they knew they can't run them. We saw Bryce Young, it looked like every bit of the Heisman Trophy winner that he's going to be. And they attacked secondary and they got on the board early. And then after, Georgia gets punched in the mouth, how do they respond? And, we saw the response just not adequate enough. That defense got chopped up pretty good by, Bill O'Brien and Nick Saban and Bryce Young, really got it done. But speaking of coaches, let's start with that. I wanted to start with the coaching carousel. And then, guys, we are going to talk about the college football playoffs and the odds, some of the early looks that we have with that a little bit later in the show. But right now, Dave, I want to touch on a lot of movement still with the coaches. We're seeing, as every domino falls, another job opens up, more rumors. Joe Brady fired, from Carolina. He's in the mix. I'm hearing him, maybe he goes to Miami with Cristobal. Maybe he's involved in Oregon's search. But Mario Cristobal leaving Oregon was the biggest last domino to fall, which opens things up. We've seen rumors of maybe Chip Kelly going back. They've reached out to Chip Kelly. What are your thoughts on that?
You even said something last week, like, the worst kept secret, right? Mario was going to Miami. They just had to get Diaz out of the way. And that's all they were waiting to do, negotiate his buyout or whatever. I get it. And I get Cristobal is this guy that played for Miami, was assistant coach there soon after he graduated. He's got the roots there. I understand all that. I don't think he's any big ticket, big winner. I mean, Oregon really, they should be in this college football playoffs if you beat Ohio State in the horseshoe. The Pac-12 sucks. And for you to go in there and get your face beaten by Utah twice, and what was their other loss? Cal or someone? It was someone.
Stanford.
Stanford.
It was Stanford.
Awful team.
Stanford. That was that goofy overtime game with the pass interference. Yes. Like, remember? Yeah.
Yes. Yep. And they blew, I think, a 14-point lead late in that game. Go ahead. Good luck. That's great. Miami, you got what you think is your guy. I thought it was a little surprising. I'm not surprised he left. If you remember, Willie Taggart left Oregon right before that to go to Florida State. These guys see the bigger picture in Florida, but they don't always succeed. But it is interesting with the Chip news. I think there's real movement on that. I think there's a real good chance. Well, Oregon's got a great facility.
That's what I wanted to get your thoughts on. I think Oregon. I think Chip goes back in a heartbeat. Like, I don't think that's a problem. And I was on BetMGM tonight last night. We were talking about it. Trista Crick from Barstool. She's a huge Oregon fan, and the rumors are about Dan Lanning, coming over from Georgia. They kind of got squashed a little bit, but who knows if that's a real thing. And I'm trying to figure out at this point. I believe 100% they don't reach out to Chip unless they're interested, right? Because they have that relationship. So they're not going to just pull his chain. Like, they want him there if they're reaching out to him. I think he would leave in a heartbeat. So I think if there's mutual interest, that gets done. The question is are they reaching out to Chip because he is the fallback plan, or are they reaching out to Chip because he's the number one target?
See, I think he's number one target. And honestly, if he doesn't beat USC late in the season, there's a chance he's going. So I think he sees the writing on the wall, too. I think it's unfortunate, but I think the days of UCLA being that national powerhouse are long gone. They just can't find – they're going to be decent. They're going to be here and there. They might pop up a good team. But it's just – I think he's got a better chance to win in Oregon. He's got the resources. He's got the – facilities. We've seen Oregon make the playoffs, right, under him, obviously. I think he goes, and I think they're just working on the buyout situation from UCLA. I think he's their number one. Yeah. I mean, you could think of a fallback, but, I mean, they've had too much history with Chip. I don't think he left on bad terms. And
no, I don't either.
Yeah, because it was after the.
It was very hard for him to leave. If you remember, he was very emotional and he kept going back and forth. Us being Philadelphia Eagles fans, we know the whole story. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Was hired by Tampa, decided no go at the last minute. Comes to Philadelphia at the last minute the same way. So very tough for him to leave Oregon. I think he go back in a heartbeat. I'm just curious to see, because I think Oregon fans don't want to see it. Like, I think as much success as he had there, I think they want the program to move on and kind of turn the page and look into the future. But so much of your success, with a program is, based on the quarterbacks that you recruit. And I think that's where really Cristobal failed. I think Anthony Brown this year and, even Tyler Slug last year, he transferred to Texas Tech, but I didn't think he was the answer. He turned the ball over a ton. And we saw it with Vatek too. Like, if you can't get your quarterback, then, ultimately it's going to fall on you.
Yeah. And let's look at a team that's very similar to, that we've talked about a handful of times on here because of our boy Arroyo, but Fresno State kind of just did what I think Oregon is trying to do. They went back to Jeff Tedford. He had some history back there. They lost their head coach. I want to say he went to, where was it? K-State?
Washington, right?
Washington.
That's Washington. It. Yep.
And back comes Tedford. I mean, they know what they're getting with him. They know they've built success. That's why I think Oregon's feeling the same way. I think it's their one. I can hear you if their fans and stuff want a little different. I get it. I do. But look, he'll win there. I'm certain of that. He will win there. He knows that area.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So I think it's
Then what happens
gonna
to
be
UCLA?
well, that's the best part. Aranda is the rumor.
Yep.
Is that Aranda would
Yep.
love to go to UCLA. So can you imagine Lincoln Riley if Aranda follows him to the Pac-12?
He's gonna be mad. He's gonna be mad,
bro. He's gonna be so pissed.
him.
Absolutely
Yeah.
owns them, dude. Absolutely owns them. So that's what I want to see. Like, give me. I want to see Chip to Oregon just because I want to see Aranda in UCLA. I want UCLA, USC next year. Aranda versus Riley again in the Pac-12. Aranda, because that was the thing is a lot of people were like, Riley's running from the SEC, and some people, there's a small portion of people I really respect that are like, Riley is running from Aranda. Like, that is why he's in the Big 12. And, listen, LA weather and money, all of it helps, right? You know what I mean? You get $500 million, they're selling his houses, 500,000 over asking or whatever, or 5 million. I don't even know what the numbers are, but just that, he got a ton, just boatloads of cash to go over there. Yeah. And it was a great move. I don't blame him one bit, but if Aranda follows him, it's going to be hysterical, dude.
It will. Like, I'm not running, no offense to Aranda, but I'm not running from Baylor. Like, I know my resources and everything are better there, and he has to work miracles to beat me. I'm running for the money and the weather, like you said.
Yeah,
I think.
Well, I think he has ties with UCLA. I think that's what it is. It's like he has ties.
I just meant Riley.
Riley.
I meant why Riley. Yeah, I don't think it's Aranda, but it's funny.
Didn't hurt. I mean, I'm sure he's not going to miss him.
Yeah, what do we got? What do we got still open out there? I know you're talking Joe Brady. It looks like he'll end up with a coordinator position, though. He's probably not going to land a head coaching spot.
It's what they're saying. Who knows, man? I mean, listen, I heard a lot. I heard that he's not in love with the recruiting aspect of college football, but I think that also he's probably not going to wait around if he gets a good opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, I think ideally he would like to stay in the NFL, but he's not going to pass up opportunities to. I would think he wouldn't pass up opportunities to, get a job. But I know that the hot rumor is Cristobal in Miami to go join him as the offensive coordinator. But I heard some stuff with Oregon, but who knows? Might be just light rumors.
Well, yeah, and then didn't Oklahoma just hire Jeff Lebby from Ole Miss, the offensive coordinator down there?
Yes, so now they got Venables and Lebby. So could
you throw Lane with Brady? I mean, who knows, right? Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, it would be. I mean, I'm sure Brady wouldn't mind going back to the SEC,
Right. Yeah. It's going to be fun. Oregon's got it. That piece has to drop before the rest goes. You're right.
Yeah, 100%. But listen, let's get into, before we get into Army Navy, let's just talk a little bit about the bowls, right? We have bowl season coming up. It is a unique time of year. I actually love it because I feel like it's really it's a little bit easier after we've seen the entire season just to kind of pinpoint some spots where there's value. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, just the kind of like some of the light strategies that we get into, when we look at the college football slate, the bowls, there's just so much movement as far as, coaches dropping out, players dropping out, declaring for the NFL draft, the transfer portal, so many layers of movement as far as players and variables and things that you kind of have to factor in before betting these games. When you attack, these college football games, Dave, like what is one of the things that you look for?
Well, the first one that you mentioned, like obviously you're still going to do your breakdowns. You're going to look at your metrics and where you think, you might have advantages with Vegas. Very hard to get advantages, but where your lines may fall compared to Vegas. And then you're going to really start to dive into the meat and potatoes of it. And where I start first is really head coaching success in bowl games. It's not like you're going week to week here. You actually have, most times 2 or 3 weeks to prepare for a bowl game. So there are obvious, back in the day, Bobby Bowden was a great bowl coach, would win many, many games. Jimbo Fisher is actually one of the winningest bowl coaches right now. So, coaches' record in bowl games, very important to me because they know how to travel, right? This is a huge thing. You're going to these places and you're going around holidays. You got to bring in your family. You got to, set up these walkthroughs. You got to go to these sponsored events, these dinners. There's a lot more on your mind than just football. These coaches are able to pull that off successfully. I think it's a big key. And one of the first things I look at is head coaching record in bowl games.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. You want to look at what coaches are successful in preparing their team for such a unique circumstance, because motivation, Dave, is just such a key, I feel like, in these types of games, because with, we can take Clemson, for instance, right? Now, I don't have a play on Clemson, Iowa State yet, right? But, that's a game, a team like Clemson, playoff aspirations, thought they'd be in the college football playoffs, thought they'd be competing for a national championship, right? And now they have to get motivated to play the Iowa State Cyclones in, whatever Tom, Dick, and Harry Bowl it is, right? And it's how do they respond to that? And as a coach, how does Dabo get his team up for that? Or do they just kind of like mail it in and, just kind of go through the motions, right? You see, players declaring for the draft, when you have these big programs and things like that. So motivation is key. You want to target some teams that maybe haven't been to bowls in a while, right? Where it might be a much bigger thing for that program. Look at like an Old Dominion or somebody, a team that's not typically in these bowl games, during bowl season. It's going to mean a lot more for them. The players, the seniors are going to be likely to play, more likely to give effort, more likely to make it a memorable experience for them, because for a lot of them, it's going to be their last game of their career. So you look at, concentration of seniors and how many teams of those are playing. Motivation is a big thing. But, one thing that translates, Dave, because there's a lot of time off from when the season ends to these bowl games. So it's like having 4 bye weeks for some of these teams, right? And we know in the NFL, how tough it is to kind of, get things going after the bye week. We always, target coaches that, prepare their teams well during that time. This is like a month off and the holidays are mixed in, New Year's, people are going, is coming up. People are just going wild, with their plans and stuff. And one of the things I feel like that translates is the running game. And it's and if you target these teams that run the ball well, I think they have a lot better chance to perform above market expectation than some of the teams that are reliant on the passing game, which requires more timing, right?
Yeah, those are great points. So that, we just talked coaches, we talked players transferring out of the portal, or even, sitting here declaring for the draft. Those are great. And then that comment about preparation and the running game carries also in weather. You're going to go to certain places in this, that you haven't played in before. There's a game usually up here in New York, in December that's, cold, wet, snowy. Yep. I remember West Virginia went there and they just weren't ready. They were trying to sling it around with, what was his name that ended up getting drafted? Not Doji, he's still there, but it'll come to me. And they couldn't throw the ball at all.
Greer?
What's that? Yeah, Will Greer. Yeah, the next coming, right? Yeah, the Florida transfer. Yeah. But yeah, no, you're 100% right. The running game's key, but also looking at the, environments in which they're going to. Listen, if you were like Clemson and you were supposed to be, in the playoffs and they're sending you out to Boise in the blue field, there ain't no motivation. None. So look at what these teams, where they're going and where they're playing, and if they're used to that, that's another key. Very good point.
Oklahoma, another team, right, was just penciled in for the for the playoffs and never got there, right? Never got there.
Oklahoma State?
And Oklahoma State gets the rug pulled out from under them at the last minute. That's a tough one. Who's Oklahoma State got? Do they have? No, Utah has Ohio State. I'm trying to think off. I don't know who they. Penn State? No, they don't have Penn State. Do they?
Oklahoma State's in a big game. They're in one of the New Year's Six. They're Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, that's it. That's why I was thinking.
And they're getting 2. I actually kind of like them. Gundy plays well in these situations, but there's also the motivation of the new head coach already. See, that's interesting too, right? A lot of these teams that lost their head coach have, temporary coaches in. Notre Dame has a real one. They've already hired him and he was on the staff. So that's a different angle that we're going to have to look at when we get close to that game. Because he's coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a question coming in. Army Navy guys. We're
Yeah,
going to talk about it in just a few minutes. We can transition to it right now. Like, let's talk about the
let's
Army
go.
Navy game. This is one of the funnest games of the year. I feel like, it's not always easy on the eyes, right? But I think that it's an opportunity for us as bettors to kind of get some action, before the bowl matchup. So it gives us that. I do have a play on this one. I do. I know that
I do
the
too.
big thing everyone focuses on is the total in these Service Academy games. Obviously, these games go under all the time, but I actually like Army laying the points in this one. I laid the 7 with Army in this matchup. And when you look at these two teams, Dave, obviously they want to do the same things, right? But, Army is just so much better, I feel like, than Navy this season. They're 8-3. They're a 2020 team on both sides of the ball, top 20 in scoring. They're top 20 in defense. They're 11th in yards per carry allowed, right? So that's kind of like the big thing. Like defensively, they're going to be able to shut down Navy. These both teams do one thing: they run the ball, right? So Navy's not going to sneak up on them on how they run their offense or the triple option or any of that. Like both these teams see this offense. It's just pretty much man on man. They see they see this type of offense every day. And when you looked at when Navy played Air Force, Dave, early in the season, right? They got absolutely nothing. They lost the game 23-3. They had 68 yards of total offense in that
Mm-hmm.
game. They were 34 for 36 rushing, right? A little bit over a yard per carry. Now, listen, that skewed a little bit because they had a muffed snap that went 23 yards over the punter's head that ended up being a safety that was like a 23-yard loss. But even if you back that out, like if you look at Navy's top 2 rushers in that game, 24 carries, 48 yards, 2 yards per carry. If you go back to when they played Cincinnati, when they played when they played good rushing defenses this year, Navy's been held to like 3 yards per carry or under, right? Offensively, they're just not a very good team. And defensively, I think Army is a lot better than a lot of people think. When you look at rushing success rate on both sides of the ball, Army's in the top 30 of rushing success rate, offensively and defensively. So I think they're a very complete team. Navy ranks outside of the top 100 in offensive rushing success rate. So I don't think that team total unders on Navy, I'm sure it's a tiny number, right? But I don't think they're going to score many points at all. I know there's going to be weather. I know it's going to be wet. I actually think that helps the offenses. They're running the ball. As an offensive player, if it's wet conditions with your footing, you know where you're going, but the defensive player doesn't, right? So there is
Yeah.
an advantage. I think if you're talking about wind and passing offenses, that hurts the offense. But I think in this type of matchup, I think that the weather does help the offensive teams, and I think Army's just the better team. And it's it's going to be a low scoring game, so laying a number like this, like the key number of 7, is always kind of risky. But I just think they are just much better, like on paper. And I think the only reason that we're not seeing this thing steamed up is because these games have been under every single time.
Yeah, I all great points, and but I'm going to give you my counter. And you got me last week with the Pitt and Wake, but I like Navy today, and there's a bunch of
Okay.
reasons, and it's one of your betting ethoses, and it's the under, right? The under is 49-1 all time in Service Academy games. In 50 games, they've gone under 40 times, 80%. What do we say when the game's under? Take the points, right? And in this case, I know it's not that simple because Army does have a decided skill advantage, obviously, from a rushing game. I think they've played a tougher schedule. But in the end, if I can get that 7.5, that's what I'm looking at. And I got it early in the week. It is down to 7, like you said. So if you can see that creep up to the half point later today, I'm in love with it. I'm betting it at 7.5. I'll even buy the extra point. Look, I look at SP Plus. SP Plus shows me a gap between these two teams of about 16, 17 points. Why is the spread 7? Because they know games like this, for one, very competitive, just because, they look for this game all year. They don't care about the other 11. 2, the under potential. They're scared to get much higher than 7.5 or 8. And I think Navy has actually played better football closing out the year. They did have the big win at Temple, their last game. They almost beat East Carolina before that. You mentioned the Cincy game, 27-20. They were right in that game, beat UCF. They've played a little more competitive football down the stretch. What they can't do is they can't defend the pass. They're a little better against the run, but Army will have its way, and Army can actually pass the ball. That's going to be the key here. If the conditions are good enough and Army's able to, sneak in a couple of those passes, because Navy flat out cannot pass it, and they won't pass it. Notre Dame, they threw it twice. They're just not going to do it. If they can just keep this game at arm's reach and allow them to keep running, because even you mentioned the game against Cincinnati, they ran the ball 69 times still. Navy's just going to keep pounding
69, nice.
Yeah, very nice. And here's the other thing. First time this game's been played in New Jersey up at the Meadowlands since I think it was 2003 or so. It's been played there 4 times. Navy's won 3 of the 4. They've had some good success up there. They've traveled well. They have a little history. Those were the days Navy was playing better. But I just like their recent form. I think Vegas is telling me something with, shortening this line to where I expected it to be much closer to 11, 12. And that tells me go Navy.
Yeah, implied score like 21-14, right? We got like a 35-point total, 34 in some spots. Numbers fluctuating, 7, 7.5. The best way to get the best number is to download the Sharp app without a doubt, right? You'll get odds comparisons from all your favorite sports books. And then that way you can get the best number. If you want the 7.5 with Navy, you can find it somewhere. The Sharp app's going to give it to you. If you want to just lay the 7 with the Army, it's going to give it to you. You can get the totals. Sign up for the Sharp Bets promo is down below, and you can get our pro college football cappers do have a play on this one today. They are on the Army-Navy game, so you can also get their professional picks as well. So make sure you join the team over at the Sharp app and, have some fun, man, because bowl season is going to be lit. There's a lot of great matchups, and there's a lot of edges out there. I have about, I want to say 6 or 7 bets already in the account. So if you sign up for the Sharp Bets team, you can get 30-day access for absolutely free. So come join the team and get sharp for bowl season. Dave, let's move on now to the college football playoffs. We're going to bring in Lexi, our resident producer who is in Michigan. And they have been really the story of the college football playoffs so far. A huge win against Ohio State, against the Ohio State Buckeyes. Really shocked everybody. And now we get into the playoffs. We have the 4 teams. And the lines came out, and we're seeing, 13.5 with Cincinnati. And then we're seeing Georgia up to 7.5 now laying against Michigan. But let's bring Lexi on, and let's talk about the Michigan Wolverines a little bit. Lexi, what's happening?
No, nothing. Hey. Just you're living on cloud 9 still.
What a week in Michigan. Michigan upsets Ohio State, shocks the world, gets into the college football playoffs. And then, to top it all off, Dan Campbell gets the job done 3 months into the season, and the Detroit Lions get their first victory. Is it just like a parade every day in Michigan? It's got to be like,
it's just like the stars are aligning, I'm just going to run with it. I'm excited. It was seriously probably one of the greatest weekends in sports in a while. Sadly, coming from the Lions, 1 win, but hey, do what you got to do in the rebuild.
Yeah, Jason, check it in. He's going to live bet the Army-Navy. That might not be a bad idea. I think you'll get a good idea of how this game's going to go pretty early. Get some live lines and punch it in.
Yeah, let me just say, last year was a 15-0 game, but it was 3-0 going into the 4th quarter. So really, and that was an 8-2 Army team versus a 3-7 Navy team. So it's a very similar situation. I think live bet, exactly what Drum said, you'll have a feel of this game pretty quickly. If Navy can stop the run early, I think you have value. If you're seeing Army gash them, jump on Army.
Absolutely love it. But back to the college football playoffs. Lexi, what is it like in Michigan right now? I know people are going crazy. How comfortable are they with this matchup against Georgia, who was really just supposed to smash everybody en route to a national championship until they got punched in the mouth themselves in the conference championship for the SEC?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely got exposed, I think. And it's just funny that, Harbaugh's taken all this criticism all these years of not beating, Ohio State and stuff. But really, it's like Georgia hasn't beat Bama in a longer time than Michigan hadn't beat Ohio State. And so it's like they never got over that hump still. So I just feel like this motivation that Michigan has and the almost like a chip on their shoulder that everyone just keeps writing them off, keeps saying, oh, it's the SEC. They're not going to do anything. They weren't going to do anything against Ohio State. They were going to lose to Iowa in the championship. It's like, we've been blowing this out of the water. So I'm ready for it. I've never been more confident. I'd rather be just confident and then fail, like, if we end up losing somehow and just ride this wave, because I think we can beat Georgia. I love to see Michigan in the matchup against Alabama in the national championship. Just saying. Yeah,
so we talked about it early on last week. As soon as the lines came out, I will admit I grabbed Georgia as quick as I could at 7. And I'm going to watch it, because that's not saying I think Georgia's going to win, but I just thought the line value would go up. And you already seen it, Drums. It's up to 7.5 minus 1.
Yeah, you got ahead of the market. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so this is not saying I'm not playing Michigan. This is saying I think you're going to see, Lexi, a lot of people just start to ride the Georgia's going to bounce back train. Harbaugh can't win it. I think we're going to see some 8s, 8.5 by game time, and then I'm really going to decide, because I do think Michigan is live in this game. I do. I really do think they can play with this team. My concern is, can McNamara really do it? Because they're going to take away your run. They're going to take it away.
It's going to have to be him. Yeah, that's the thing. It's another huge Josh Gaddis game, I feel like. Another,
just the play calling by that guy. It's like if he doesn't get a Power 5 offer in this offseason, he's getting one next year. I mean, it's just been incredible. And it's been great to see all the like Harbaugh haters actually step up and say that it's just some of the most beautiful football you've ever seen played. And I mean, I'm not even just saying that as like a homer. It's like the Ohio State game, the Iowa game, just these play calls. I mean, it's just incredible. And it's what he was brought in to do, and he's finally doing it at the right time. Like I said, the stars are aligning. The universe is like handing Michigan a silver platter at this point, I feel like. But it's just been incredible.
But Bryce Young was the key to that game, right, Drums? Mm-hmm. And that's why it's McNamara.
Well, that's the thing. It's got to be McNamara. Like, that's how you beat them. I think they they kind of, gave the playbook. You're not going to run the ball. Like, you're not going to physically pound Georgia the way you pounded Ohio State. And they did. I mean, they manhandled Ohio State. I was shocked. That they were able to just not. I mean, I knew they would be able to run against them, but just to me, the deciding factor was like every time Ohio State got a little momentum to get back in the game, they would just run the ball down their throat into the end zone. And it was just like, okay, like this is just, if they're able to score at will that way, there's no way Ohio State can get back in this game. Just too much pressure. And, we saw them, fold up shop. And, but
we just
definitely
want more. We're hungry. It's great.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of the thing. And the reason I didn't jump on this game yet, because, I did. I was looking at it and I'm like, man, we're going to get like a real short number here because Michigan so impressive. Georgia's so unimpressive. And I think we did, a little bit. And I think the 7's kind of key there. And I still might bet Georgia. I'm not sure. But I have to figure out, I think in both these matchups, I just kind of have to figure out like the coach's mentality in each of them. Like, can I trust Kirby to lay this kind of big number against a Michigan team? Who am I trusting more, Harbaugh or Kirby, right? In this matchup. And that's really what it comes down to, is who's going to come out with the better game plan, who's going to have their team ready when the game gets tight and when they're losing, because it very well could be a back and forth game, which coach gets tight and which coach goes for the jugular. And I think that, from what we've seen, Josh Gaddis has been brilliant from a play calling perspective, and has kind of had a good feel of when to attack the defense. The problem is against Georgia, you're not going to get to pick and choose. Like, life is easier when you can establish the run first and then kind of take your shots down the field. They might not be able to establish the run at all in this game. And then if they become one-dimensional against that Georgia defense, it could get sticky.
And that's why I will look at the 2 games these teams lost. Because that's what the coaches are looking at. I'm going to stare at the Michigan State game, and I'm going to stare at the Georgia-Alabama game. And I'm just going to see what the teams can do similar to the opponents they lost to. We know Kenneth Walker had a huge game against Michigan, but it was offset a little bit by their ability to pass the ball. So I think that opened up some of the run lanes. Georgia's physical. They're going to be able to be similar to Kenneth Walker. Can Michigan sell out and stop that? Their defensive line, Hutchinson, tremendous, right? Getting after the quarterback. But can they neutralize? Will they have a game plan where they can actually – I want to see how Michigan State really played him. So that's what I like, the coaching aspect that you said, and I'm also going to look at the their 2 losses. That's important to me.
Yeah. Lexi, what do you think was the biggest surprise, like, in that game? Like, in the Ohio State-Michigan game, like, as a Michigan fan, what surprised you the most?
I just think it's like really the consistency of like, when Cade threw that interception early, I was just like, oh God, here it comes.
Here we go again.
Here it goes. But like it's just the will to pick it up and keep going. Like this team has kind of let their downfalls like eat them alive. And I think it kind of did that in the Michigan State game. Like, they started getting down, and then they just like kind of laid flat there at the end. But like with this Ohio State, it's just like they just kept coming. They just nonstop, the whole game, didn't let that interception affect them at all. And that was the most surprising is like the turnaround because, typical Michigan teams in the past, once something bad happens, it's just like a domino effect. And then it's just like game over. We get blown out, 2018 against Ohio State, for instance, so that was definitely the most surprising and the most like happy I think I've ever been as a Michigan fan seeing that.
I can imagine. It's a tremendous story. I mean, it's one of the best stories in college football this year. Who do you think is the key player against this matchup for Georgia?
Like we said earlier, I think it's going to be Cade. And, and here I am still saying, well, can he really throw it and go deep and get all these yards, but like he has shown time and time again when he needs to step up, when he needs to not make mistakes, like I said, he threw that one interception, but just taking care of the ball. And maybe game management has been the key all along. And I'm sitting here saying that it hasn't been. And, but I still think that JJ's electric plays when he comes in, even if it's just him running the ball because he's such a
Do you think they mix that in more or less? Like when it gets a defense like
Harbaugh's
Georgia?
never been here. Our team has never been in this part. So I think that at least they have time to kind of really create a game plan. But I still think that JJ's
they got time. They got plenty of time. And that's what I think is like, do we see aggressive, go for everything Harbaugh? And Dave, what's your thoughts on that? Like, we know, like we saw Harbaugh with the 49ers as well, right? And go to a Super Bowl. And, a big part of that was his willingness to kind of like buy into the players around him and what they could do best, right? That was the big year for Kaepernick.
Yeah.
And, they were kind of like ahead of the curve in the NFL in that regard, and caught a lot of teams by surprise with what they were able to do offensively. Do you think we see a more aggressive Harbaugh with a month to prepare going up against a defense that is better? You know what I mean? So it's almost like, when you're playing your little brother, when you're playing your big brother, sometimes you got to pull out the tricks. And do you think we see a lot of that from Harbaugh?
I do, because look, the bottom line is you're the dog, right? And you got nothing to lose. It was very similar to Ohio State game. He had a little more to lose in that one, but now he's in the playoffs.
And he can't. And the thing is, he can't bank on being back here.
Yeah, no. He can't play that type of game. I do think they are uber aggressive, and to the point that I think they're trying to attack similar to Alabama. And I think Michigan has the receivers. We're gonna have to. It's Cade, man. And I've been very impressed with Cade down the stretch. Different arm angles. He's been able to make some big throws. So it's a big game, big spot. And I think they're going to turn the keys over to him and say, go get it done. And then we mix in the power game. So, yes, I think he comes out firing. Yes,
absolutely.
Who knows? Maybe they'll throw Donovan Edwards in there to get that beautiful dime that they had against Iowa. I just I know he was a quarterback in high school, but wow, like that right there. It's like this, guy comes in and just drops a 45-yard dime for a touchdown. You're like, okay, let's do it. Let's go. Like that kind of stuff. I think they're for sure going to have to pull everything out of the bag.
One thing we can all agree on, Harbaugh, if you're listening, we know you listen all the time. No fake punts, all right? No fake punts, no fake field goals, none of that stuff. If you're going to be creative, do it offensively and with the ball in the hands of your best players. Don't get crazy like that. We don't want to see anything like that from the Wolverines. But listen, we got a couple weeks to break this thing down. I am excited. Before we get out of here, a couple more minutes, Dave, I want your thoughts on Alabama-Cincinnati. This is the biggest underdog story you could have. Group of 5 team going against the greatest dynasty college football has ever seen, with the greatest coach that college football has probably ever seen in Nick Saban. It's, we're 13.5 is a big number, but I'm not sure if it's big enough when you look at these two teams and how they're built. And I know we like to roll our eyes a little bit when we talk about the SEC is just better than everybody, but from a certain standpoint, if we're being honest, they have the biggest, they have the best, they have the most athletic athletes, and Cincinnati is really punching up, so to speak, in this matchup. This is a huge step up in competition for them, and I think they're going to see a level of skill position player and just a level of players in the trenches that they're just not used to, not accustomed to playing against.
Yeah, you said it all, and now you're going to get the. People were kind of down on Bama going into the Georgia game. They
the
Iron Bowl, right? Auburn, yeah, and rightfully so. You're going to get the opposite effect now, right? I actually think it's a really good opportunity for Cincinnati bettors. I'm not in love with the 13.5. I would like a little bit more. You saw they played Georgia competitive last year, right? In that
they
one
did,
game.
But I also think that Cincinnati team was a lot better than this one.
But they got the same quarterback. It's true. I hear you. I do hear you. I think he's a year older.
And that was a game that they should have won. Like, they were smashing Georgia and let Georgia back at the end.
Yep. And I think there's a lot of value in Cincinnati. I'm not ready to punch it. This is not a game I did a early bet on because that 13.5, I think is going up. I think we're going to see both SEC teams get an inflated spread by the time we get to game time. It'll be interesting. We know what Saban is. He's going to go out there and he's going to tell his team he's a dog, even though they're two touchdown favorites, right? And he's going to try and motivate them that way. Cincinnati's got good defense. I think they can give Bryce Young some different looks, some fits. I think they can play the underdog role well. They don't win. Don't get me wrong. They do not win. But
well, the matchup I think people are looking at from a Cincinnati defense, Alabama offense is Sauce Gardner, those corners against Alabama's receiving core. Can they lock them up? Mechie's out, right? Can they lock those guys up and make things tough for Bryce Young, right? And I'm not so sure they can. I know that's on paper, it looks good that way, but listen, Alabama has a ton of guys that they can kind of roll in there to replace Mechie. They're so deep at that position, and I think that I just think Cincinnati's going to have their hands full. I haven't bet it yet, and I'm going to tell you why, Dave, and tell me what your thoughts are on this. I'm just not comfortable with, is Alabama going to try and beat them into the dust, right? And that's really what it comes down to. And I think if they wanted to, if this was hey, if Alabama wins by 35, they get the national championship, right? If that was the rules, I think they could win by 35 in this matchup, to be honest with you. But they don't. So their goal, we're not at a point in the season where we're trying to impress the committee and we're trying to win by margin. Their goal is to win this game, stay healthy, and go prepare for Georgia, Michigan to win a national championship. So they could take their foot off the gas here. They've been terrible against the spread during the year. Yep. They could take their foot off the gas in this situation because Nick Saban doesn't care about your bets. Nick Saban doesn't care what you think. Nick Saban cares about going, advancing, moving on, keeping everybody healthy, and playing for a national championship, and then he'll beat the piss out of that team, right? Yeah. But he doesn't him smashing Cincinnati doesn't really matter. And I don't necessarily I'm not a first half better guy. A lot of people pivot to the first half and say, oh, just take Alabama -7 in the first half or whatever. But I don't like that. I like betting the full game when I have the handicap. So I'm kind of waiting on this one to see I'm trying to get some insight into what Saban's mentality is really going into this. Is he going to keep the foot on the gas?
Well, it's not just his mentality. Let's be honest, his team, right? I mean, let's go back three games before the Georgia game. Squeak went out against LSU throughout New Mexico State, but they won by 6, LSU. They won by 7 versus Arkansas, 2 against Auburn. It's been a lot of that this year with Alabama, and that's why they're terrible against the spread. He wants to win those games by a lot, but it's sometimes his team mentality is also not necessarily that killer mentality until they were in this situation when they were told you can't. And they're not going to be told you can't against Cincy. Yeah, I saw it's a really good point.
They're going to be told you can. They're going to be told you're winning the national championship. Bryce's get the Heisman. And, so how is he going to be able to keep this team focused in that situation? Historically, he has, right? Historically, these semifinal games have been blowouts, but I don't think you can just bet this type of game on history. I got to kind of let this marinate and see what kind of reports we get coming out of both sides. And it's really, to me, it's about Alabama. It's if Alabama wants to win this game by margin, I think they will, and I'll bet Alabama, but I'm just not convinced of that yet. Like, I kind of have to look at it. I don't think Cincinnati can be competitive if Alabama has their foot on the gas the entire game. But they don't have a reason to, because all they got to do is advance. So that's kind of where I'm at with this one. So good stuff. Listen, we got plenty of time to break down these games, before we get to January. Bowl season's coming. We're going to have a bunch of bowl bets for you guys next week. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, download the Sharp app. Get in the free Discord. All the links are in the description. Join the Sharp Bets team. We got our pro cappers giving bets across every sport that you can imagine every day. All the best bets, all the best betting angles. So join the team. It's going to be a tremendous bowl season. More importantly, it's going to be a tremendous sports season in the NFL. We got NFL winding down, going to the playoffs, so you can get all that information on the Sharp app. But we will be back next Saturday. Guys, thank you for joining us. Hopefully we get these wins in the Army-Navy game. We can continue to be profitable, get some momentum going into bowl season. But thanks for hanging out, guys. I'm Mark Drumheller for Lexi and Dave Gleckner. We will see you guys next week.
See ya.
See ya.